Buenos dias, and welcome to Channel 19 Action News Team. I'm your host, Danny Cermak.
And I'm John Krajcik. Tonight's subject is the transformation of the North and South. And tonight's subject will be kicking off with, what was the New South? And speaking for us tonight is McCoy Harrington.
Thanks. Ever since the Civil War, the South has lagged behind economically for years and relied heavily on the North for money. But not long ago, the idea of the New South was introduced, where it would be capitalized on the industrial growth of the South. Senator Donaldson Caffrey was quoted saying, "The New South is like the Old South with a new superstructure." And very quickly, farmers and their families began moving to mill communities like those in Piedmont, an area with the largest growing cities, railroads, and mills in the South. And the mill towns were all very closed in and controlled. But is it really much different from the South before? As pointed out in the book, The Colored Race in America by the Howard Association, the workforce remains very heavily segregated, and much business has remained rural, and the South even has a new form of slavery, with chain gangs comprised mostly of black prisoners, like things in the Good Roads movement.
Thanks, McCoy. Speaking of the South, industry right down there is at a big right now because of their abundance of natural resources like coal, iron, tobacco, and turpentine. These brought major industry movements such as the textile mills, the production of steel, cotton mills, and agricultural labor. These movements seem very successful because right now there are about 161 mills, and it is predicted to grow to about 400 mills by the time we reach 1900. With the movements of industry, there were more opportunities for people who didn't have the opportunities to work in the first place. Now, women are typically working in domestics or as child nurses. With more room for work, convicts also have the ability to work as well. And with 90% of the convicts being African American, they are also now able to work. But they are limited to working low wages in cigarette factories or working janitorial jobs, but rarely worked with white workers. And now everyone has the same opportunities to work. And for now, to explain this further, we go to our specialist, Brandon. Brandon?
Thank you, whoever introduced me. In the 1800s, the workforce incorporated characteristics such as social Darwinism, which is a survival of the fittest system, and the wage work system, which is people getting money for working. These concepts are a large step up from the previous social order and the peonage system. Also during this period, the mechanization of manufacturing industry drastically impacted women, Chinese, and African American population. This means that all of these people's jobs were being replaced by machines. Female jobs were being replaced by the auto loom. The Chinese were being unemployed due to the Chinese Exclusion Act. African American jobs were being lost because European immigrants were securing these jobs for themselves. And now to you, Austin.
Why, thank you for your unhelpful information. Now, a big topic right now is the labor force businesses, like the NLU, AFL, and the Knights of Labor. I will first talk about the NLU. NLU stands for National Labor Union. They were the first labor force in the United States and were founded by William Celius in 1866. They supported workers very well, supporting resolutions advocating banking reforms. Reforms like to stop workers to borrow enough money to start their own factory. The maximum enrollment was 300,000 members, which disintegrated after Celius' death. The Knights of Labor was founded in 1869 by the Philadelphia Garment Cutters, which was led by the Grand Master Worker Terence V. Powderly. They brought together wage earners regardless of skill. Knights enrolled 110,000 members by 1885. They endorsed the abomination of child labor and monetary reform. They sponsored consumer cooperatives for members starting at small grocery stores. The 8-hour campaign swelled the ranks of the Knights of Labor. Lenora Barney increased women participation by 10%, which is around 50,000 workers. There were 20,000 to 30,000 nationally. Their fall happened with the Haymarket Square on May 4th, 1886. The Knights Gaines Post rally that day was against police. Except during the rally, a bomb was thrown into the crowd of police, killing one and injuring many. Police responded by shooting back at the crowd and killing many. Because of this tragic event, brought forth the idea of the AFL, which is American Federation of Labor. They bargained employers for the better working conditions, higher wages, and shorter hours. They had 140,000 members. They declared war against the Knights of Labor. The tragedy of the 8-hour movement let the AFL pull ahead of the competitors. The president refused to recruit unskilled workers, including African Americans, women, and most immigrants. The AFL became the king of labor. Now we're off to Dean with opportunity and education.
Thanks, Brandon. With the jobs progressing, so did the education. With several types of education, whether it was industrial education, training immigrants for jobs, or traditional education, teaching history, Greek, and Latin. There's been problems with the National Education Association pushing for a more traditional approach toward education. In most cases, the education they will receive won't have outweighed the amount of, the monetary gain they will receive from having a job. Tuskegee, for example, was provide African Americans with an opportunity to go to college, and it primarily emphasized teaching. It provided several teachers for African American schools. Then women had similar opportunities as had normal schools, which provide a 1 to 2 year program, which allowed them by the end to become a teacher. The education affected some of the class time. The new immigrants coming in and them getting involved with industrial education, it further supported them becoming the new lower class, allowing a rise to a new middle class. The new middle class largely worked for big companies, larger growth in the middle class. As leisure became more common, parks became more common as well. They were largely liked by the population. For leisure, people enjoyed vaudeville such as matinees, which ran from $0.25 to $1, and ice skating, roller skating, and even baseball. Baseball became more popular as Albert Spalding, the owner of the White Stockings, began to industrialize the game, and now to racer with advancements in technology.
Some new technologies are becoming more and more popular as we know it. The telephone and the light bulb are changing not only urban life, but industrial production monumentally. Another new technology was the use of anthracite coal, and it is revolutionizing the way we get our energy. This method of using coal is much quicker than older methods that we used. Using coal instead of water is much better because the generators on dams are tremendously difficult to build, and the maintenance on the dams and the generators is very demanding. One of the next big technologies right now is the disassembly line in the meatpacking industry. The disassembly line consists of breaking the animal down, and most of the time they are pigs. First they start by hanging them by their hind legs, and they cut off their heads to kill them. And then they set it on a conveyor belt and break open their chest to get rid of all of the organs. But back to the Edison Electric Light Company. Henry Ford is currently working on a gasoline combustion engine and will soon design the first automobile. This is making westward expansion of industry very simple and much cheaper than it was a few years ago. The Transcontinental Railroad sweep the nation, also making it much more common for businesses and industry to pack up and move west. These trains are able to transport big machines that these massive industries rely on to build their products. The sale and spread of industry is being supercharged through all of the new technologies that are common today. Now off to Danny, who will discuss cable cars and the layout of the new cities emerging and the environmental impacts of the new city growth and some of the characteristics of the urban landscape.
Thank you, Professor Glenathan. Now we move on to how cities have greatly evolved over time, starting with how these cities were organized. Cities were originally unorganized and very unpopulated, but they started to become more vastly populated through the expansion and change of the cities. Many people ask what are the very characteristics of the urban landscapes. Ever since the Chicago fire, which destroyed more than 60,000 buildings within a 4 square mile radius, including much of the commercial district, it left nearly 100,000 people homeless. The urban landscape has drastically changed. From people living in wooden houses expanding outwards, they began building them with steel to prevent fires, such as the Chicago fire. And not only did they start expanding outward, but they also started expanding upward. A large piece of this does happen to be the Flatiron skyscraper in New York City. People started living outside the cities and started forming suburbs. With the creation of the first mass transportation system, this was all possible. The first mass transportation system was commonly referred to as the cable car. The cable car was a unique system that originated in San Francisco, but was then laterly mass-produced in the city of Chicago. The cable car system allowed people living outside of these big cities to live in suburbs in a nice place, which was often associated with many people living in a closed, confined space. This was a major problem because when the Chicago fires outbroke, a lot of people were living in small spaces, which brought up the death toll. The environmental impacts of this were none other than catastrophic at the time. Often with cities expanding, they expanded over rural farmlands and just natural landscapes that happened to be there. They spread over them so quickly that people didn't realize some of the industrial designs that they were doing was just a mistake at the time and was later costly down the road. Now we go back to Danny.
And now weather with someone who's always looking snazzy, Danny Sternmack.
Danny, you're looking snazzy as well. As you can see in the forecast, we have another Hurricane Flanhofer continues to devastate the people of Colorado. How this hurricane developed overland and over Colorado, we will never know, but it's causing devastation for millions. Back to you, Danny.
From all of us at Channel 19 News, thank you for tuning in.
Stay safe out there with Hurricane Flanhofers. We do expect the death toll to be in the trillions.
Go Patriots.